Bayley, can you believe we're about to do this?
I can't, but it feels so amazing all the same.
It's hard for me to even imagine what we're about to undertake.
It's life-changing. I think you said that recently, like it's going to have such a profound impact on our lives, and you can't be prepared for that. You really can't.
No. Plan for the unexpected or something like that?
Something like that. Well, this is episode 0. This is the precursor to the Michael's Walk podcast. I'm Bayley Turner.
And I'm Michael Epp. We're just sort of feeling our way into this. I've never done a podcast before.
Nor have I, actually.
Excellent.
How is that possible? We're both white and still haven't managed to make a podcast.
Well, we can check it off our list now.
Yeah, that's right. We're not cis, so maybe that's what stopped us all this time. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michael Epp.
And I'm Bayley Turner.
Welcome to Michael's Walk.
The podcast.
Michael's Walk is a road trip, a search for something. Spoilers, it's myself, and it was inside all along.
If only it were that simple.
Driven by Tori Amos's album, Scarlett's Walk, I'm recreating the journey Scarlett took in its 20th anniversary year.
I'll also be there.
With the loving and patient,
Always patient.
support of Bayley and Teague Lee, 3 trans queers set out across America
That's 33 states in 55 days.
to connect with the songs, the land that inspired them, and the fans inspired by the songs. We'll talk music, travel, healing, and hope as we ask the questions: how do I heal from 15 years of coercive control and manipulation?
And what role does the music we listen to play in our own relationship narratives?
We've self-produced this podcast and trip.
You can support us via GoFundMe.
For the full story, head to michaelerb.net.
Michael's just checking their notes because, as you can probably imagine, we're both type A's of very different persuasions. But effectively what we wanted to do with this episode was just do a bit of a precursor to talk about the trip and what it's going to be, talk about the podcast and what you can expect by tuning in over the course of how many episodes is it?
18 in total.
Nice. Your phone's ringing. Oh, it's your alarm telling you to make a podcast with Bayley. What'd I say about type A personalities?
Well, that was Teague putting it in the calendar.
Oh, bless.
So-
The silent partner in this podcast. Big love to Teague Lee.
Yeah, we will be kept on schedule because of Teague.
Yes.
And thank God for
Thank
that.
God for that. Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose one of the things that I wanted to ask you before we begin is, have you finished packing?
I have not started packing.
How have you? What about bunny slippers?
I
Bunny slippers?
don't have bunnies.
Sure, we'll take them.
I have made my list, and I have a whole day tomorrow to do nothing but pack. So
Very nice. Good call.
I'm, yes. Some people thought I was cutting it fine, but when I had to get work out of the way before I could focus on this, and my last day at work was yesterday, and so now this has my full attention, and it feels glorious.
Yeah, to all those who said that we were cutting it fine, we can cut it finer. You ain't seen nothing as to how fine we can cut this.
3 full days at home before we fly overseas for 2 months?
Plenty of time.
I'll probably get a nap in. I lie.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd talk about how we would lay out the episodes so that people know what to expect.
Yeah.
Basically, we thought we'd have an episode dedicated to each song from Scarlett's Walk. It won't necessarily be thematically surrounding it, but it probably will delve into each song pretty deeply. But more so, that song will be represented as an episode when we touch on that girl's journey across America.
Yeah. So for people who are new to the whole kind of Scarlett's Walk Tori Amos situation, Tori wrote this album 20 years ago this year and wrote it whilst mapping a sort of idea of what it would mean to travel around the entire continent of North America, and her visitations to certain areas and certain highways and byways and cities and towns were kind of all summed up and all represented by a particular song.
Yeah, they play into the narrative of the album as a whole. Unfortunately, because we're not independently wealthy, we have had to do a much truncated version of this map. But all that means for you as listeners is you won't be getting the songs in album order. They will appear as we visit them and in our own version of Scarlet's Walk. After all, it's my walk, it's not hers.
Exactly. And for those of you who haven't checked in yet, follow Michael on Instagram or because Michael did these incredible track by tracks, just sort of giving a bit of a taster of what those tracks are about. So this kind of follows on as a sort of expansion of that as well.
Yeah, we'll be unpacking each song quite thoroughly. We'll be meeting with and interviewing other Tory fans along the way. It's going to be pretty spectacular.
Absolutely. And obviously reflecting on our own experiences of the places and the sort of roads that we're on and the kinds of discussions that we have as sort of alongside that journey where all of us kind of processing a whole bunch of our past and our journeys with gender and relationships and our individual friendships. It's going to be wild. It's going to be amazing.
I'm just so ready to absorb and experience and reflect that I don't want to get carried away with my own expectations. We'll discover this together.
Absolutely. And each of us had different experiences of America as well. So all of us are seeing parts of the country that we've never seen before, we've never encountered. And what I'm really excited about is the Tori Amos community is so vast, as well as our own friends in those areas. We're going to really be shown those cities as they are. We're not doing a sort of tourist edition of things. We're going to be taken to restaurants and shown parts of the cities that are real for locals, and that's going to be really amazing.
And for those of you out there that are not Tory fans, firstly, shame on you.
Yeah, what the fuck?
And secondly, it's okay. We will talk about other artists as well.
We promise. Just Jewel.
Do you know the day we leave Toronto, Sarah McLachlan is playing?
I've only just found out that Moona, which is like my favorite band, are playing. They're touring as we leave, and there's one show while we're in America in Ohio, but it's like on the 31st. There's just no way it's possible.
No.
I also found out that the Chicks are touring.
Right.
I will be keeping an eye on that one.
We'll only allow it if it's in a city that we have.
Oh yeah, no. There'll be no deviating. I've been firmly roped in. We don't have the time. We literally, to give you an understanding of what is about to happen to these three people, it's pretty much every day pretty much becomes get up early. It's anywhere between 3 to 6 hours of driving, stop, meet a person, have a coffee, go to a bookshop probably because it's you.
It is me.
Go to some sort of queer sex venue because it's me, and fall asleep, and then up 3 to 6 hours driving, bookshop, queer spot, friend, interview, bed. 3 to 6 hours. It's going to be bananas.
Like if you average that out, 33 states in 55 days, that's a different state every day and a half.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. It's going to be wild. It is going to be wild.
It's going to be pretty brilliant and fantastic.
Well, maybe it's worthwhile just kind of telling people the story about how this harebrained scheme kind of came together and let people know the history.
So, Tori released Scarlet's Walk in 2002. That same year, I moved out of home. I was living with my parents still. I was 18. I moved from home into a live-in relationship with a man who was much older than I was. And it turned out to be a rather troubled relationship for many, many reasons, many of which I'll be unpacking on this journey. But there were lots of forms of abuse, but no signs of physical abuse or sexual abuse. And so I didn't recognize it as an abusive relationship. And it wasn't until we had been together for 15 years that I finally started to acknowledge that things were not right and I needed to end it. So that was 5 years ago, in 2017.
That you ended it.
That I ended it. And so now it's the 20th year of Scarlet's Walk, which has been my favourite top, most personal Tory album since its release. It was the first album that I was a fully fledged fan for, and so it holds a special place on so many levels. But one of the things that occurred to me after that relationship ended was I had been misinterpreting so many of the lyrics throughout the entire relationship, and now I can see clear as day that Tori was singing about power imbalances and misogyny and all sorts of controlling relationships. But I had been reading them through the eyes of someone who wanted to believe the reality that had been built around them. So a few years back,
I would, before you go on, like I'd really encourage that it wasn't a misinterpretation. Like, Tori's songs are available to who we are emotionally at the time. That's one of the magical things about her. And the beauty of this whole thing is that your experience of that album hasn't been twisted or tortured by how you interpret it. You could reapproach that album, on the other side of that relationship and still feel connection to those songs. And that's something that's incredibly powerful. And I know, we'll discuss this a lot more, but, I would venture to say that your interpretation when you were in the relationship was really helpful for you at the time, because kind of giving you a sense of why and giving you a sense of support to get through the moments when you were really stuck inside it was valuable at that time. It wasn't necessarily a misinterpretation, just an interpretation that suited who you were at the time.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in no way knowing that that's how I was reading it then has it diminished my feelings towards it or how powerful I find it now. Even more so, even because I can see how that all played into my listening. However, a few years back, Gisela in my writers group said to me, Michael, does Tori have anything that is travel related? And I said, oh, well, yes, of course, Scarlet's Walk jumped straight into my mind because I had been dreaming of driving the Scarlet Map since it came out. And then she said, I just think you should do that trip, apply for a grant and write a memoir. And all of a sudden, this project basically as it's unfolding now, popped into my head. And while we're yet to receive any sort of grant funding,
That's how the way that works out, isn't it?
We're making it happen regardless. And it was incredible then later meeting Bayley, and when I told her my plans, she was so on board. In fact,
there's no questions asked, were there? It was just, we're going to do that.
Yeah. Should we tell the story of the night we met?
We should, but I just want to also commend you on your favorite album being Scarlet's Walk, because that's a lot less ambitious a travel journey to write than To Venus and Back. A lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, I could have been applying to Elon Musk or something.
Yeah,
I?
Bezos.
Yeah.
Daddy.
Could I ask Amazon for next day delivery for myself to Venus?
Indeed,
and
you
back.
could. Or, ocean to... we are doing ocean to ocean in a sense.
Well, that's true. And then back to ocean.
Yes.
There's many... I had a hookup recently, and the parting words were, I hope there's no little earthquakes. And I appreciated it greatly.
Oh, that's good. Apologies to anyone who doesn't get the Tory puns and Tory references that are abound. We will try our best to explain them. We've just been running through a bunch of Tory albums. Her discography is available on Wikipedia. But yeah, we met. It was actually a really funny night because I'd had a bit of a difficult situation with a friend at the time and happened to be in a part of town that I wasn't regularly visiting, and called another friend, my soulmate Phoenix, and was like, hey, it's just been a bit of a shit night. And she said, look, come out to Sunday Licious, which is like a queer femme night here in Naarm in Melbourne in Australia. And I went, yeah, screw it. And wasn't a big going out girl at the time, but it just was very serendipitous that I wound up at this party where you happened to be.
Yes, I had been taken there by a lesbian friend of mine, Beck. Hi, Beck. So we're at Sundaylicious, and I had already made out with 2 people that night.
Good work.
Before meeting Bayley. And I followed one of those people out onto the street with a bunch of their friends. I didn't really know anyone. And we wandered off down to get kebabs at 1 a.m, as you do after a party.
What I didn't know at this point, which is a factor of the story that we always forget to tell, which is some months prior, Michael had written a short story that had been published that had a character in it that had my name and was a very similar description to me and like very similar personalities of the people in the story. It was just I know it was a weird, and like I didn't know this at the time, but this is something that you...
I hadn't even made that connection at the time. It was like a couple of months later.
Oh, right.
Because it hadn't yet been published.
That's right.
And then I got sent the edits by the editor, and they mentioned something, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Did I write her to life?
Here she is. Then we're having kebabs. Well, some people are having kebabs.
We were standing outside. We weren't going to get any. And someone, actually Phoenix, mentioned that if someone, or maybe it was Nouveau, someone mentioned if their partner didn't like pink, they would break up with them. It was a relationship deal breaker if the partner didn't like pink.
And Bayley says, the only person I'd break up with someone over is Tori Amos. And that was an ambiguous statement that could have been taken in either direction. And so my response was, oh my God, I have Tori Amos's lyrics tattooed on my body in her handwriting.
To which I replied, oh, so do I. It's just like so nonplussed and like, whatever.
Yeah. Next.
What lyrics do you have, just for the people listening at home?
I have some lyrics from a song called Jamaica Inn. They say, the sexiest thing is trust.
Which was a big part of your living relationship, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I quite enjoy the face that people give when they ask me about these lyrics and they're like, oh, why'd you get those? And this happens a lot at bars. Or what's that mean? And I was like, and I always say, I got these the first time my partner went to prison. And it usually shuts them up pretty good.
I'm sorry. My shoe is filling up with blood and I need to go away. Like, yeah, mine, I have the black of the blackest ocean and that tear in your hand written on my inner thighs, leading to my crotch, which pretty much tells you what my feelings about gender are.
Look, we all have different ways to express our gender.
Indeed.
And Tori's handwriting is one of them.
Yes.
So get
amazing.
on board.
Yeah, but I think after that we just realised we were going to just become instant friends because I don't think either of us had encountered someone who was a Tory fan, certainly not in Australia, to that degree before. We started chatting and hanging out, and then we dated for a period.
Yeah.
A few months.
Yeah. And then right when things were getting like serious, Bailey's like, Saw's got a job overseas, bye.
Yeah, that was something. That was a time. It was, I think, like what was really special is we both identified really early in our relationship, like, no, we're going to be in each other's lives forever. There's just this just means too much to the both of us. And I know for me personally, at the time that I met Michael, my brother had just passed away in quite a sudden and sad way. And I had been seeing someone around that time who had really done a number on me when they broke up with me. And this was like a few weeks prior to meeting Michael. And so the relationship that we had was so healing for me, like really brought back my hope. Like I remember feeling like I had no hope left after that particular, very short relationship ended. And our time together really restored a lot in me. So it was a very powerful
I have to say the same. I mean, of course I was still reeling from...
This was 2018. This wasn't long after you'd split up with the partner.
No. It wasn't that long. And in that short time, I had dated someone else that had gone awry. And so Bayley and I's relationship was also a big part of my own healing journey, because Bayley really pushed me to set my own boundaries. I far too readily give too much of myself in relationships, and I recognized that I was falling into the same pattern with the previous relationship that had only ended a month or so before I met Bayley. And so through open, honest discussions, like, we really got to know each other in a way that was supportive and honest and constructive, and without unspoken expectations or anything that can confound problematic relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, it was the first step towards me sort of getting back on my feet. Until they moved overseas. And everything.
Yeah, all that.
Went.
The funny part is I took them to a theatre show at Red Stitch, and I think I said something about it being a date, and you were like, "Is this a date?" And I think I turned and I was like, "I sure hope so." It's like, just very forthcoming woman.
No, because we got there and neither of us had sort of acknowledged that it was a date until half of the evening, and then 5 minutes later we were making out.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
good times. But yeah, and then it was at some point at your place that you sort of said you wanted to do this, and I knew that it was something that I really wanted to be a part of. And obviously then I went away and had moved overseas for the long term, and so the chances were that I was not going to be able to be a part of the show. And this is all before COVID as well. Like, you know, that they planned this huge travel, and COVID happened, and I came home and transitioned, and by that time, Michael had been with their now partner for for a year and a bit or something, a significant amount of time, and that the trip had evolved to be the two of them. But I kind of came back on board when we realized that Michael really needed to write, and that was going to be sort of such an important part. So I was really wanting to be there to support Michael, and also to be on the trip for my own reasons, but to also do the driving was kind of my, like, that'll be my main role. That's kind of my job.
Totally downplaying her role as usual.
We're going to have an incredible time as well with the interviews. You know, the interviews really are there to sort of support Michael's content, and we're talking to so many people about their relationship experiences, and particularly queer relationship abuse, which we both identified as something that's really important for there to be more resources around, for there to be more narratives available. And so I'll be sitting on a few of those interviews to support with, I have a background as a counsellor and as a mediator and as a consent educator, and I want to bring all of those skills into that room so that those interviews can be safe, and they're going to be, I can't even fathom, I haven't even begun to think about how important those interviews are going to be, not just for you, not just for the work, but for those people that we get to meet with.
Yeah. Yes, the queer aspect is a big thing, but just more generally as well, it astounds me how many people equate physical and sexual violence with abuse, and
nothing else.
And nothing else fits the equation. And I guess the whole point of this project, if I had to whittle it down to a single little acorn of truth, is that there doesn't need to be physical abuse going on in order for there to be abuse.
Absolutely.
And we all need to talk about it in order to find ways to identify those things when they're not as easily identifiable.
For sure. And queer people were withheld from family and domestic violence narratives for ages, and even from laws, like you couldn't legally, I mean, it wasn't too long ago really that you couldn't even identify that you were in an abusive relationship if you were in a queer relationship, because it would mean admitting you were queer, which was against the law. So queer people are really behind in the recognition of abuses in not just their romantic relationships, but their family relationships and their friendships.
But even still today, just the resources available for queer people, and especially trans people, are just so limited.
Absolutely.
Comparatively.
So it's going to be pretty groundbreaking shit when you've established.
Yeah, we'll really get into it. One of the other things that we'll include is this lovely little practice that Bayley and I have, is whenever we're feeling the feels and we're not quite sure where to turn, we have this thing where we'll text each other and say, "Can you give me a prescription?" Because, you know, Dr. T is in the house and
Just far more potent than Mr. T.
yes.
Yeah, we much prefer Dr. T.
Yeah, Dr. T.
If you can't have a cup of tea, you want Dr. T.
Oh, I want a cup of tea.
Yeah, we should have done this with tea.
Oh my goodness.
We can't. Well, yeah, next time.
Oh, yeah. You know, we're buying a kettle
Oh, what a great idea.
while we travel and
Yeah.
the biggest thing of tea that we can find.
Yeah,
Because we'll just be needing constant tea.
too right. I mean, not while we're driving, but sure.
Yeah.
But as we go.
Yeah.
Little tea breaks.
And in the mornings.
Oh my God.
So the prescription then is any of Tori's songs that is chosen by the other person. Usually it's left open-ended so that it's left to the universe to decide. But sometimes you'll know what's going on, and so you'll try and find the right track. Or just let the first one that pops into your head hopefully speak some truth.
Yeah. And they always do. There's always, even in ways that we don't always expect, even when we prescribe to one another, we'll be like, "Oh, I'm feeling this vibe." And there'll be just a line in it that rocks the other person's world and their perspective. So we thought it'd be really wholesome if we brought that into the podcast. And
In fact, there's one track that I hadn't rated at all. I barely listened to until it was prescribed to me, and now it's in my top 10.
which one's that? Climb.
Climb.
Yeah.
I
Bloody
just
Climb. Everyone.
hadn't paid any attention, and then as soon as I was told to listen, oh my goodness, there she was waiting for me.
So do we have a prescription for episode 0?
Episode 0, prescription.
I feel like because it's a starter, it should be a good starter song. People who've never heard Tori before and want to sort of get a bit of an understanding about what she's all about. And
Yeah, I quite often, I know it might be cliched, but I quite often introduce people to Tori with Silent All These Years.
great call. It was one of our first singles.
Yeah, it was very early days, but it also just speaks right to the heart of where she's at and what she's trying to do.
Yeah. I'd have to pick A Sort of Fairy Tale, which is a song off Scarlet's Walk, so you're going to be hearing a lot about it. And it's also very special to me for a number of reasons, and we'll be talking about it then as well. But I feel like it really captures what it is we're talking about. It's a song about transit, it's a song about relationships, and I feel like you're going to listen to it after we've done this, aren't you?
Yeah. It's totally being played. So join us, follow, subscribe.
Yeah, so we will be keeping the GoFundMe open the entire way, because the GoFundMe is kind of like our milk money as we travel around for food and fuel and bits and pieces and kettles, apparently.
Mama needs her tea.
Yes, so you can donate at any time. There's a link in the GoFundMe as well to the merch. So we have produced a bunch of tops and mugs and aprons and tote bags and fun stuff if you want to really get into the fanship, and we'll be wearing those all around the place. Obviously, follow and share Michael's Walk, the podcast, and keep an eye out on our socials for all the other bits and pieces that are going on.
I also have a Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
That is normally, I've been running it for years now, and it's usually my writing and reviews, book reviews and recommendations. But for the duration of this podcast, subscribers to the $10 level and up will be able to get access to bonus content for the podcast.
We love bonus content.
So that's worth jumping in onto. If you can afford $10 a month, I'll make it worth your while.
That's right. Well, next time we see you, it'll be, I don't know what our first one is.
Well, somewhere on the East Coast.
Yeah.
I think we're doing...
Yeah, it'll be somewhere San Franish.
Yeah.
But we'll see you then,
Yes,
wherever
we
it is,
will.
whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
Remember what we said about cutting things fine? We've got a plan, we promise.
The Michael's Walk podcast acknowledges that the journey they are undertaking takes place on the sacred and unceded nations of many proud Indigenous peoples. From the lands of the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, we are fortunate to call home, to each and every Native American tribe's land we'll set foot on as we travel. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and humbly acknowledge their sovereignty.